What we got here is a 6T45. This is a tranny out of a 2011 GMC Terrain. The most common problem with these trannies is this particular component here. This is a wave plate or a Belleville spring. It breaks. Obviously you can see how it's waved. It breaks and saws into this housing, cuts it all up. So this piece is no good. There are repair kits where you can get you can reuse these things. I don't recommend it, but I've never tried it. So there is an apply piston that I've already taken out of there that applies the inner clutch pack in here. There is a seal. You're not going to want to forget to change that. There's two seals on the outside and one seal on the inside. I'll show you a picture. There is seals around. This one's been taken out, but it's they're specific O-rings. They're color coded and they only fit one way. There's an apply piston that goes on the back of this. Right here it gets damaged in the process. When that ring rubs, it rubs the edge of this. This piston here pushes forward and applies this clutch pack where the wave spring breaks. One thing you're going to want to notice is inside here, I don't know, it's hard to see, there are grooves and you can physically feel them. And what that is this rides down on this stub shaft. I gotta just say shaft, I guess. And what's in there is there's four of these. It's a weird square ring. You have to use a sizer to slip those over. There's four of them, and then when you're done, you use this. This is a special tool, of course. There are others out there. This thing is tapered, and it fits over and pushes the seals in so they don't tear when you slide that housing over it. Obviously, when you've got this tranny apart, you're going to want to check behind this apply piston here. I have it pre-assembled. It's just a piston and a snap ring. Behind it, you can get kibbles and bits and lots of metal. There's a speed sensor down there that you're going to want to check and make sure it's not damaged. I have a thrust bearing that's supposed to be down there. That is right here. It only sits one way. It'll sit into that groove. Right, so we've gone over that. Just to speed things up process-wise in this video, I've got the whole housing changed and the assembly. So there's our wave plate and metal discs, friction material, metal disc, friction, metal disc. Our new apply piston that's going to push on this and apply this clutch pack. On the back side, it's just the speed sensor and a tab that when you're pressing this down to put the snap ring in, you don't want to press it too far, you'll bust that off. I've seen people make that mistake. Obviously you can see inside, it looks pretty clean, no grooving. Obviously it's brand new. On the top side here, there is a clutch pack in there. I've already got it all assembled in a snap ring. Same concept as this, but smaller. Same wave plates, smaller plates. There's a thrust bearing up here with the edge facing down. You can't put it the other way because the next item won't sit on it. So there's that. This shaft is removable by a C-clip. Down there on the bigger trannies, 6T70s, I think they're not. So you need a special tool to press clutches together. I made this, but obviously you wouldn't need it. But it clears the shaft when you're trying to push those clutch packs in. But there is play, like there. Right, so we're gonna set this down. Obviously we sized it with this. We set that down in there. It pretty much just goes all the way down. You got your thrust bearing down there. One of the next things to go in that gets damaged is when that snap ring lets go from the clutch wave plate breaking, it can get caught on shit. and gets jammed up in here, and it's inside here riding around, gets caught, can do more damage. This one wasn't so bad. I'm changing this piece because it's got some pretty big nicks out of it. Here's my new one. It has an edge where the clutches will sit on. Correct. And we got our thrust bearing down there. We'll set this down. Right, it sits pretty damn flush, as you can see. Right. Next thing to go in are all these. Same concept. Wave plate, steel, friction, steel, friction. I've marked these because they only go in one way. It's a pain in the ass. Trying to do a video. That one sits down, and then we'll put a steel down next. These two grooves, my line was there, but these two grooves, I believe, let me set this down. They sit down here. Sorry, no. This is why you want to not mix them up. Right like that. So the two alignment tabs, it's important that you get it right because they won't go down all the way. So obviously that, friction, they're new. They fit on to this guy, just like that. Another plate. Drop that guy down. Friction. Right. That's that. Next thing to go in, I believe, is the one-way clutch or sprag clutch. That's the apply face right there that presses up against that clutch. I've marked it, but this thing, to check it, only goes one way. Right? And that's how you quickly check that. I would recommend you check for damage and rings getting pushed in there. It sits in here just like this. Alright, just like that. I guess the next thing to make it easy on ourselves would be the Planetary Gear Set. Let's take this guy apart. This assembly is going to sit down in there. There is a plate in there, thrust bearing. It sticks in there, so that's going to sit down on this. And then there's another two. You can't put them the wrong way because there's an edge on them. This guy right here won't let you go face down. Set that down, and that fits into the one-way clutch. And I just monkey it around. Sometimes it can be hard to get in there. Right there. Okay, that's the ratcheting you're hearing from the clutch. We got two thrust bearings there. They're both facing up. Our next piece is this guy. Oh, sorry. This guy, and that groove faces down because that thrust bearing's right there. It probably wouldn't touch if you had it the other way, but we're not going to do that. So that sits there on top. The next big piece is this guy. It's got a tapered bearing, that thrust bearing that sits in there, and you'll see why in a second. There's a bigger one there, and on the back side, obviously that one, well, that's that one, but I'm gonna put that down in there. Okay, and you'll see why this one's tapered, because it centers on the back of this guy, right like that. So we'll set that down. Sits in the groove, bigger one facing up. You're gonna set this down. It's our final piece for the gears, planetary gears. Ouch. Okay, look at that. We can put some clutches in next, which is all this. So notice I've got the big one and the groove facing down, because that will sit in around the one-way clutch. These are marked, but this groove has got to line up right there, and you'll see why. That's your first one. Then you've got a friction disc that's going to sit in the one-way clutch. Kind of a pain in the ass to put in with one hand there. Then another steel. Obviously it only goes one way. Then friction. These don't have tranny fluid on them yet. I haven't soaked them, but there's that. Then another steel. Rub that in. Another friction. Right like that. Then another steel. Right. And another wave spring, and that's marked. That's the final piece to go in. Obviously they all go one way because there's an apply piston that fits down these grooves, which is the next thing to go in. That is this guy right here. There's a piston on this side and a piston on this side. These are the feet that clear those clutch plates. If you got it wrong, they'll touch and you'll never get it in. You can check these if you want with air pressure. I wouldn't do anything more than 40 psi, but those are what's going to press on the clutches. One going up and one going down. Those are bleed holes right there. That is going to sit with these two holes facing the case. There's a O-ring or a gasket that goes up against it, obviously. Set that guy down just like that. Okay. The next item I like to put in, because you got your thrust bearing there, is this guy. It's going to sit on your thrust bearing, and then your clutch plates will go around it. Obviously you want to check them for grooves and damage. That's going to sit down just like this. And you can tell it sits real close, right? That's how you know it's all the way down. Our final clutch set to go in is this guy. Obviously you can see there's one big one, friction, I believe, yep, metal, friction, metal, and a wave plate. And they sit in just like that. So the first item down, obviously I've marked it. Wave plate's gonna go down. Then we've got steel plate. Gotta go this way a little bit, I believe. And no, this way. They only go one way. Next, friction, which sits around this guy. Then another steel plate. Mark them. It makes it any easier for you. I did. And their friction, obviously that ain't soaked in trans fluid. Right? And then our final plate. And that's what the clutches will press against. That sits down in there like that. For demonstration, I'm not going to put this in because it's a bastard. But this spring, or this retaining ring only goes one way with the flat side down and the beveled edge up. You can see my marks from it. That's going to slip into this groove right here. And you're going to manipulate it all the way around, right? That holds everything together when those apply plates push this way, right? I'm just going to leave this out. Next item would be this Slinger, I believe, yes. And that will clear. That's bolted in. I'm just leaving it like that for demonstration. We can put in this component next. It has another thrust bearing. Obviously it will only go one way. You couldn't put it in the wrong way. Just don't forget it. This thrust bearing will sit in there, right? This shaft's going to slide down. There's another thrust bearing up here. Put that down. Just like that. There. Okay. We've got an oil slinger, I guess. And this has a seal that's going to sit in the case there. And we're going to put that in because it sits behind the chain. There is another seal on this side of the case because oil gets passed through it. We have a thrust bearing that's going to go on here, right? And move this forward a little bit. It can only go one way, the lip facing down, so it stays on there. We've got our chain and what the thrust bearing is going to sit against. So we can just slip this around, right? Sit this all together. Just like that. There you go. Obviously things you want to change. These are like one-time use seals because this is what the pump's going to sit against, the fluid pump. And they sit in there like so, right? Obviously we got our park pawl, which the finger's gonna catch. This guy right here. And that's gonna, you have to manipulate it in there with the pin. I'm not gonna do it just for a demonstration. But yeah, you can see the effect. And that's what keeps your vehicle in park. It locks into those grooves. Obviously it sits in there and it's held one way. And when you move your shifter, it moves it away. And the way I like to do these is this item next. There is a gear that comes out, can only go in one way. There is a big thrust bearing that only sits on one way. This guy's gonna sit right in here like that. That's pretty much it right there. You're gonna put a new gasket in between the case half, which is this guy. That goes all the way around here. And we'll just move this for a second. Pretty heavy. And we'll take a look at the other half of the case. So this is actually the fluid pump, and behind It is an O-ring, which is located in there. It's a big O-ring, looks similar to this. That seals the pump against the case. There's our other O-ring or seal for our fluid slinger. There's a new filter in this guy. You have to take the pump out to change the filter. It's a twist lock design, so it fits in one way and locks. And it's a non-serviceable, obviously, filter unless the tranny's got an issue. There's a seal in here that I changed, this little guy. Bearing in here, that thrust bearing over here sits on it, and you set this entire case down on that. And that's pretty much the assembly part.